Okay, great.
So much that we seem to have forgotten in the most recent past, namely the 400,000 plus victims of the virus who have died in anonymity and loneliness, many of them. To remember what this country is all about, to remember what this country can do when it's determined to do it, to remember that government works efficiently for people and helps lift up people when government is used properly. So I think that's on his mind going forward, and I think the biggest distinction between today and the past literally 48 months, we can now look to the Oval Office and look to the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, and say with certainty, he is a good man.
Mike, he will make pledges today during his speech and goals. But when it comes to this idea of unity, what's the measure of success?
Boy, that's a good question, Lester. I mean, the measure of success, I think, immediately will be things like, you know, do you get the massive appropriation bill through Congress, you know, the update of the CARES Act? Do you get another $1 trillion or $2 trillion to help people who are desperate for help? I mean, people who have been thrown out of their homes, lost their homes, been evicted from their apartments, to get the logistics down properly for the distribution of the vaccine. Can that be done successfully? Can he begin to deal with the infrastructure problems of this country? I think he's going to find out, we're going to find out very quickly within the first 3 months whether the Congress and the Republicans will balk at everything and try to obstruct everything, or will they be forced, because of the reality around us, to contribute to governance for the first time in 4 years. I think that would be some small measure of success, definition of success.
And to that point, I mean, it's not just what you get done on a bipartisan basis, it's also the tone. And I wonder where you think he'll be in terms of uniting and speaking to those who didn't vote for him. I mean, it's almost, you know, many presidents at their inaugurations or on election night will say, I'll be your president whether you voted for me or not. But one thing President Trump did say this morning that was true is that 70 million plus people voted for him. That's a record. More people voted for Joe Biden. That's a record, too. We had one of the greatest turnout elections we've ever had. But the point is that there are tens of millions who may feel differently about the scene that they'll watch today, and how will he reach out to them?
Written by American composers in honor
You know,
of the 59th
Savannah, I really believe that Joe Biden is a person who is grounded in the concept of healing, and he's determined to heal the nation. But healing is the key. And he knows what healing is all about. He's learned it from a life of horrific loss that everyone knows he's endured. But he has endured it, and he has healed himself, and he knows the magic of healing. And I think that's going to be part of the component part of him dealing with Congress, with dealing with a Mitch McConnell. The only way this country is going to get better quickly is if both sides talk to one another at the political level. And I think at the citizenry level, you, me, people around this country, the 74 million who voted for Donald Trump, I hate to say his name, but the 74 million who voted for the former president, combined with the 81 plus million who voted for Joe Biden, I think he can address all of them. It's in his nature. He's an understanding guy. He's a genuine human being. He's grounded. He's been grounded for as long as I've known him, in the faith that he holds, in the faith in his family, and the faith of the Republic, and in the faith of being able to do his job. So we're going to find out, but I think he's got a PhD in healing, and he's going to bring that to the country.
Mike Barnacle, always good to get your perspective after all these years of knowing the Biden family. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's check in with Kristen Welker right now. She's there on the west front of the Capitol as we see members of Congress gathering, taking their seats. And you'll note the seats are spread out as we've become accustomed to.
Tja, machen wir mal einen Test hier, ob der Ton geht. Das reicht schon.
Results, which really underscores the task before President-elect Joe Biden as he tries to unify a deeply divided nation. We are talking about all of the ways in which this inauguration is unprecedented. Well, here is one thing that makes it traditional. The fact that Joe Biden will be sworn in on the west front of the U.S. Capitol. And that is so significant. That can't be understated. Why? Because just 2 weeks ago, there was an insurrection against this Capitol, and the very idea of holding these historic events outside was in question. And so we know that Joe Biden was determined to do it. He thought that was important. It was important to show that strength, and important to try to set the tone that it is time for the country to move beyond those horrific events of 2 weeks ago. And then, of course, just 1 week ago, last Wednesday, President Trump was impeached. And so it is that incredibly complicated backdrop that Joe Biden will be sworn in against. And his first and most difficult task is going to be to try to unify this nation. His inaugural address will call for unity, will call for themes of healing, as you were just talking about. But then the really hard work begins. And we are told he's going to try to get down to work today, passing 15 executive orders that will aim to address the myriad of crises that he is dealing with, everything from COVID-19 to the economy and racial disparities. So the question is, though, as President-elect Biden tries to work on legislation, it gets more complicated. Will he be able to reach across the aisle? There you have Senator Bernie Sanders, of course, one of Joe Biden's rivals during the Democratic primary, someone now who is staunchly in his corner. Cory Booker as well arriving. And again, it can't be overstated, just the fact that these lawmakers are here for this inauguration, which will take place on the West Front Capitol, is significant and is one step toward a return to normalcy after that attack on the U.S. Capitol. Savannah and Lester.
All right, Kristen.
Peggy Noonan joins us. She was a principal speechwriter for President Reagan and NBC News political contributor now. And Peggy, as we look at these images, and we do, of course, recall what was going on 2 weeks ago at the United States Capitol. And now we see congressional leaders coming together and being present for the swearing in of a new president. And I just started thinking about how they...
Ja. Hallo. Grüße euch hier mal. Und was ich da sehe, ist schon krass. Es zeigt ganz symbolisch, wo wir stehen im Moment. Da sind 100.000 Farben im Gras, haben sie da reingesteckt. Anstatt die Leute, die sich schwenken. Du weißt ja nicht. Wo man sich das bringt. Chat-Funktionen aus. Oh, eine ist an und bei Sun 24.000 Leute. Mal gucken, ob er das da. Mal gucken, was da so steht. Ich hole das mal rein hier.
Their Excellencies, the bilateral chiefs of mission, joined by Acting Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Salam Sabah. Members of the United States Senate 117th Congress. The President-elect's cabinet members and agency designees. Their Excellencies, the bilateral chiefs of mission, joined by Acting Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Salam Sabah. Direct your attention toward the inaugural platform. The Chairman, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention toward the inaugural platform. The Chairman, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley.
Geld wächst nicht auf Bäumen. Es wächst mit Amazon.
Lawmakers in their offices and bring them, in their words, to justice. It is such a different...
Where he was being beaten down by that mob of rioters. Today, he's going to be escorting the future Vice President of the United States. I want to bring in Leah Wright-Rigueur on that. Leah.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful image. challenge, and it's a powerful contrast to those images that we saw 2 weeks ago, where we saw Eugene Goodman essentially preventing the overthrow of American democracy. And now we see him supporting, the Vice President of the United States, and that's important.
And it's so hard to get those images out of our mind, to see these Capitol Police officers overrun. Again, just 2 weeks ago, there's Steve Scalise, the Republican whip in the House right now. The members of Congress starting to fill up the Capitol steps. At this point, John Thune as well, Republican senator. This ceremony will symbolize recovery from those events of 2 weeks ago as well. Terry Moran, now they have to get to work.
They do, and it's the challenges are huge. We've talked about the challenge of unifying the country. As we've just seen, that Capitol surrounded by a ring of armor and steel, and that is because of the division that he has set out to try to heal. And there's a problem with it, because it's about the people that stormed that Capitol aren't really believing in anything that's real. That Donald Trump is still their president. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted that out today. That is an incredible challenge, that there are two different realities, not a fight over values or policies, but a fight over facts themselves. And that's the first thing.
And that's what makes the inaugural speech such a challenge, such an additional challenge right now. So I want to bring Michael Waldron back in on that. I think it was Ted Sorensen, John Kennedy's celebrated speechwriter, who said the deeper the divisions in the country, the more conciliatory the inaugural address must be. Do you buy that?
I do think that's right, in the sense that an inaugural address can be a time when the hokiest of political sentiments suddenly take on significant meaning. Where speaking about the Constitution, as Donald Trump, I should note, did in his inaugural address, speaking about our democracy, the language that Joe Biden used during the campaign about the soul of America, those things can be kind of corny outside of the context, but they can help begin to forge a path forward when they're spoken by a new president at a time of division.
How does he balance the poetry and the prose today?
Aber hat schon einiges Gutes gemacht.
Well, it's a mistake that people make sometimes to think these are just gauzy poetry. Every great inaugural, every significant inaugural has had some part of it that was a policy. When Franklin Roosevelt talked about the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, he was talking about the bank. And here we've got 400,000 of our fellow Americans dead in the pandemic, and action that he is pledging to take. We have a demand for racial justice and action he is pledging to take. And I think also a need to reaffirm the very basics of our democracy and the power of the vote, which was put to such important display in this election.
And there you see Senator Pat Leahy, senior Democrat. It's the Democratic leadership now coming out. Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democrat in the Senate, as well as they make their way for the president. You see Democratic leader Chuck Schumer as well. I want to bring in Deborah Roberts. Deborah, I know you've been talking with voters around the country. What do they want to hear from the incoming president?
Well, George, so many people are going to be hanging on to every word, I think, of Joe Biden's today when he's sworn in, because as you all have been talking about this speech, words will really matter, and we know that words have mattered in a very negative way over the last few weeks, but I think people are going to be really listening to hear what Joe Biden is going to say in terms of reaching out to those who didn't vote for him. When he made his acceptance speech many weeks ago, back in November, there were people who said, Republican friends of mine who said they were really touched by the way he reached out, by the way he talked about wanting to govern all America, being the president for all of America. And a friend of mine who was a Republican said to me, that's not the man I voted for, but that's the man I think America needs right now. So I think he's got to sort of really make that same kind of effort today, and maybe he will touch some of these people who might be open
to trying to give this a chance and see where we go.
Thank you, Deborah. I want to bring in Martha Raddatz on this as well. You wear two hats, Martha. You spent a lot of time over the last year speaking with voters across the country during this campaign, particularly Trump voters. You're also our chief global affairs anchor. So talk about both. What do Republicans, Trump supporters need to hear from this new president? What does the world need and expect to hear?
I think those Republicans who will listen to Joe Biden and those Republicans who feel he will be the next president of the United States need to hear some sort of inclusion. They need to be touched in that way. Because I think this division in the Republican Party is unlike any other we have ever seen.
Gut, man
Donald
kann
Trump
sagen,
is such a powerful,
das
almost
offizielle Dogma
cult-like
ist ja,
figure to so many
Firma
of the people
steht,
who
egal wer
voted for
Präsident
him.
ist.
I've talked to some of the Trump voters who I talked to across the nation. They're not listening today. Others will. Others want to move on. Others want to hear what he has to say. But now they feel like they are on the outs, that no one will listen to them. And I think that is such an important message. You know, I look at this Capitol today, and I look at that beautiful arch with the red bunting. That is where those protesters came 2 weeks ago, those rioters who stormed the Capitol. That very same doorway Donald Trump walked out of 4 years ago. It is really a bookend legacy for him. He walked out of that door. Joe Biden will walk out of that door. But this is a new chapter.
Geht's langweiliger als Biden?
You think this inauguration was certainly marred by those events, but it also makes it so much more profound that you can't turn the page. It's inspiring what has happened in those 2 weeks. You look at Eugene Goodman, who was walking up there, who steered some of those rioters away from the Senate gallery and quick thinking. You look at those military bands, the ceremony. I'm a total sucker for those military bands. But the rest of the world will also see a new chapter. They will see that democracy survived. They will know that Joe Biden will take on a new agenda.
Trump war da ein
People
bisschen
who will
anders.
agree with that, who will not agree with that. I'm sure North Korea is not too happy
Als
that they lost their
Alpha-Mann-Männchen
friend in the White House,
da
but
ein
he will
bisschen
have challenges.
höher gepokert.
Knows that a page is turning today, George.
Thank you,
Ja,
Martha.
jetzt haben wir ihn
So, thank you. You
abserviert.
worked for a president who was coming into times nothing like this. The turmoil wasn't nearly as bad, but George W. Bush became president after
Ob er
disputed
so der
election,
Heilsbringer gewesen
back in
ist, weiß ich auch nicht.
2001. He knew there was great
Ladies and
division, there were
gentlemen,
great
former Vice
protests
President,
in
the
the streets.
Honorable
Talk
Dan
about how you
Quayle.
all
Das
thought
ganze
about that address.
Q-Movement.
Well, we knew that it was an important point for him to bring the country together, and really his best opportunity to bring the country together. It's the speech that most Americans will tune into. I was really struck in getting prepared for today, thinking the parallels. Yes, the divisions are stronger, but many Democrats boycotted the inaugural, like some Republicans are doing today.
Die normalen Menschen sind ausgesperrt.
Yeah, the protests were significant. The security was significant. But one big difference, Al Gore, despite having felt extremely cheated by the Supreme Court, showed up on that podium. And that was a very important moment for the country, and it showed the class that Al Gore displayed that day. And we're not going to see that by the president. We will see it by Mike Pence, which I think the vice president today is not about politics, but he is helping himself politically a great deal. Short term in the Republican Party, perhaps not, but long term, he's doing the right thing for the country.
Thank you, sir. We just saw, as I said, the former Vice President Dan Quayle arrived. The former Republican Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, also arrived earlier, saying he wanted to support the institutions. You see Senator Susan Collins right there as well. She will have a tough choice along with other Republican senators on whether or not to convict President Trump, as that second impeachment trial is likely to begin within days of this inauguration. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has still not said, Bruce, let me bring you in on this one. She's going to send over that article of impeachment. The one thing we know is she wants to get through this inaugural address first.
Seine Vorgänger nur geführt haben. Ich meine, das muss man ihm auch noch
Joe Biden trying to get to work, eager to show the nation that he can get to work on his agenda at the exact same time that Washington and Congress is likely to be consumed with the Senate trial of President Trump. Now we know Biden and Mitch McConnell have been discussing, how to share the day essentially if there's a way so that Biden can get some work on his agenda done, get Congress to consider his nominees, for instance, and in the afternoons hold the Senate trial. But of course, starting this afternoon,
aus den umgebenden Staaten, aber auch aus Iran und Syrien, da wo Leute einfliegen. Das hat er schon ganz klar gesagt. Er will auch einige Verfassungsänderungen wieder beziehungsweise rückgängig machen, die Trump in die Wege geleitet hat. Das ist natürlich auch immer blöd, wenn man überhaupt gar keine Grundlage für längere eine längere Basis da baut, sondern alle 4 Jahren dann wieder die Sachen zum Vorgänger rückgängig gemacht werden, dann ist auch Quatsch.
Now coming as well.
Ich meine, gut, bei einer großen Koalition kommt auch nicht viel rum.
Neither played a huge role.
Und das Krasse ist, gestern Abend war ich in einem amerikanischen Livestream.
Both spoke but briefly at the convention.
Sprach einer von dem von Megadeth, Washington.
For Secretary Clinton, of course, she won the popular vote 4 years ago, did not become president. So both bittersweet, bitter,
Washington
and a reminder of that, David Sweet, some sort of indication.
Wenn man sich die Lyrics da mal anguckt,
she's been very careful with her words, particularly in the last couple of weeks since those deadly riots at the Capitol. But we all remember the scene 4 years ago when she showed up after having won the popular vote and she witnessed the inauguration of Donald Trump,
der vor 20 Jahren geschrieben wurde, wenn man sich den heute anhört. Also den Text meine ich. Das ist schon krass.
Lindsey Davis, Kamala Harris is going to have a great first duty when she is vice president this afternoon. She will swear in the two Democratic senators.
It's interesting that she'll also be sworn in by Sonia Sotomayor, of course, the first Latino on the Supreme Court and the third female to join the Supreme Court. Not all that long ago, George, this moment seemed unimaginable, really, when we're talking about Kamala Harris becoming vice president. In 1976, Carol Simpson, former ABC News anchor, she interviewed Barbara Jordan, congresswoman, an ambitious black female politician in her own right. We'll come back to that. Go ahead, continue. Okay. And she asked Barbara Jordan at that time, do you think that this country is ready for a black female vice president?
I also spoke to one member who decided that they didn't want their spouse to come because they were worried about who was going to be with their children in the event something terrible happened. And that scars of what happened on January 6th. And those are, of course, scars that our country is dealing with collectively and metaphorically as well. And, of course, trying to heal those scars is a major theme for the incoming president-elect Joe Biden today. And I will also say, Savannah, I was thinking about this as you were showing the Air Force One landing in Florida. There was a pretty strong message sent here from Republicans. The vice president, current vice president, Mike Pence, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, Lindsey Graham, a senator from South Carolina, once one of President Trump's staunchest allies, they are all here. They did not attend that farewell ceremony that the president threw for himself at Andrews Air Force Base as he was leaving Washington here. Instead, they came here. Paul Ryan, the former Speaker of the House, told pool reporters on his way in that he was here to send a signal that our institutions stand and that the inauguration represents all of that and those continuing traditions that, frankly, President Trump abandoned in large part over the last 4 years. And as I've been watching everything unfold today, especially that visit to church where Joe Biden, the incoming president, reaches out to all 4 bipartisan elected leaders in Congress and says, please come to church with me, and they say yes. That is radical normalcy, it feels like to me. It is just not something that has been a traditional part of covering Washington under the Trump administration, but it was previously that way for many, many years before, to the point that it would have been unremarkable. And that is, of course, kind of the overarching theme. And I believe we're also hearing George W. Bush and his wife Laura Bush about to come in right now. Again, another signal from a past Republican president that, okay, we are here, we are sending a message to the world, to the people of America, we are going to stand together even after everything we've been through.
And Casey, as you note, there is the President Bush and Laura Bush just introduced and making their way to their seats, and we saw just behind them the Obamas as the former living presidents, except for Jimmy Carter, attending this inauguration.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. And I think we can't overstate the degree to which, and you were just talking about this as well with the former Vice President Al Gore, about what's going to happen next in this impeachment trial that we know is going to unfold in the Senate. And, you know, Democrats for sure don't want that to be the focus of the day today by any stretch. And I know Jen Psaki spoke with Savannah about this on the Today Show. They didn't want to weigh in on impeachment one way or the other. And I know Democrats I talked to certainly want to keep the focus on the day. But I will say those words from Mitch McConnell yesterday, that the president bears responsibility for what happened here, for the scars this building bears, for the scars we all have as a nation, really struck me in terms of his possible willingness to say, okay, we may go ahead and convict outgoing President Trump. I keep checking my watch to make sure I'm using the right adjectives. It's not yet noon, so Donald Trump's still president of the United States. But obviously, they are making a show of making sure that they demonstrate that it is in fact true that Joe Biden won the election. He is going to be the president of the United States. It is not, as Donald Trump has told the American public, he did not win this election. And that repeated lie from President Trump convinced all of these people to come here and to do terrible, terrible things to the very symbol of our democracy. And now Republicans have a chance to banish him, to say, no more, you are not walking back onto this stage. There is this major question about whether they're actually going to be willing to do that. It seemed to me McConnell perhaps sent that signal.
And Casey, as we watch the Obamas join the other living presidents and greet some of the dignitaries that are there, we're reminded that this is more than just symbolism. This is more than just pomp and circumstance. It stands for something, and that something is democracy and this peaceful transfer of power, something that is at the core of the founding in this country and sets it apart in many ways from other nations around the world. And that is why you see folks like former President Bush, who doesn't necessarily enjoy the limelight anymore as much as he used to. You see some of the former presidents come out and want to have that show of support. And let's turn now to Valerie Jarrett. She was a senior advisor to President Obama, and she joins us now. And Valerie, I mean, you also have been and attended inaugurations before. When you think about, you know what the job is. You were there, I believe, all 8 years of the Obama administration. You're one of the lifers there. When you think about what President-elect Biden has before him, it's so daunting in terms of the agenda, the pandemic, and then just the spirit of where this country is right now.
Well, good morning, Savannah. And I just say my breath was taken away as I watched Chief Justice Roberts come out through that door, because I do remember the feeling of coming out and seeing the crowds that awaited. And this is a very different moment, as you pointed out. But when you think about just 2 weeks ago, people were storming our Capitol, trying to take over our government. And what does it say about our country that in such a short period of time, we see people show up, former presidents of both parties, leaders across the aisle, all to celebrate the smooth transition of power. And I think this is a moment made for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, soon to be President Biden and Vice President Harris. Their combined strength, their experience, their empathy and appreciation for what our country has gone through, and their core competency to lead and never forget that they were elected to serve, I think today sends them off to a really terrific start. So it's overwhelmingly emotional for me, having been there twice and having lived through the last really horrendous 4 years. But I feel very hopeful at this moment, Savannah.
Valerie, as we're watching members of the Supreme Court take their place, I want to ask